Audiobook Academy. Book Summary. The Pale King. By David Foster Wallace. A posthumous edition of The Pale King was released in 2011. After David Foster Wallace's death, his wife discovered an incomplete manuscript he had written. In the style of Wallace, the novel is disjointed. It took him more than a decade to finish it. The majority of the stories take place in Peoria, Illinois, in 1985, when the Internal Revenue Service was based there. The author is a made-up figure in the story. Even though the individuals are vastly different, they all work in the same field. The IRS employs them. Having a strong sense of purpose drives them to see themselves as servicemen and servicewomen. They're all obsessive-compulsive types, but to varied degrees. Bullying and other forms of maltreatment were common occurrences in their childhoods, according to several of them. Wallace dives into their rambling thoughts and discovers that they are filled with sadness, loneliness, and fear. Neither of the characters in his stories are happy or content. In their minds, they are either the victim of bullying or the bully. The book comes to an end without a conclusion, although it appears that the current IRS administration in Peoria will be replaced. Boredom is the book's most important theme. Wallace claims that there is practically nothing you cannot do if you are resistant to boredom. For him, there have been just two men in his life who he considers unboring. The ability to deal with boredom is the underlying bureaucratic key. A common theme in Wallace's novel was that ennui can lead to depression. He portrays the workplace life of IRS employees as a grueling combination of long hours at a desk and brief interludes spent conversing with people who are both uninspired and uninteresting. Afterwards, they head back to their workstations. Every minute adds up to an hour, and each hour adds up to a whole day. They go to a bar after work and drink too much, with the same folks they spend their breaks with at the office. Foreword by editor Michael Peach, who points out that the volumes are written in an unplanned manner, introduces The Pale King. He found an incomplete manuscript that was primarily notes with short stories written in it, but he intends to put it all together and publish it. To write a novel about the most difficult themes in the world, sadness and boredom, David set out to do so in a dramatic, hilarious, and deeply moving way. And even though Peach believes David would object to the novel being published, they've chosen to go ahead and publish it anyhow. We can't stop ourselves from reading because David isn't here. Even though David wouldn't have wanted this novel to be published, they decided to go ahead and do it anyhow. It's a shame that David isn't here to stop us from reading, but at least he can forgive us for wanting to. An American farm field is depicted in the first paragraph. To get to a no-hunting fence, the hunter must travel through alfalfa. Claude Sivenshine, en route to Peoria in a small commuter plane, is profiled in Section 2. The pilot is really young. A dirty drape between the cockpit and seating section. Aside from memorizing facts for the CPA exam and studying the visuals on the safety leaflet, Claude needs to split his time between studying for the flight due to an inner ear issue. Specifically, he's anxious about the word puzzles. It was no problem for Reynolds, who was in his dorm room with him at the time. Claude is an agent with the Internal Revenue Service, IRS, which is where he works. The incident at the service's Northeast Regional Examination Center in Rome, New York comes to Claude's mind as he flies over the sky. Rather than adhering to established processes with some receipts and documents, two departments attempted to conceal them. Claude will be eternally thankful to Systems Director Laurel for rescuing him and securing him a new employment. When it comes to his self-perception, Claude believes that he is weak or faulty in the area of will. His roommate's constant comments at his incapacity to study reinforce that belief. The CPA exam has taken Claude 3 years to pass. If he successfully completes the exam, he will be promoted from Gs 9 to Gs 11. His thoughts flit from one thing to the next. The fifth effect in having children come to mind, as well as how he copes with stress. Asking, "What's wrong?" is part of this procedure. When the person responds, "Something's wrong," you exclaim. "What do you mean by that?" This is regardless of whether the other person admits it and reveals their troubles, or denies it. Asking, "What's wrong?" is part of this procedure. When the person responds, "Something's wrong," you exclaim. "What do you mean by that?" This is regardless of whether the other person admits it and reveals their troubles, or denies it. Claude's mind is filled with thoughts about the other passengers on the plane. It's even worse when they get off the plane and start walking about. Many passengers, including the elderly and well-traveled businessmen, choose to remain seated. After disembarking the ship, Claude's thoughts wanders to the apartment the systems have located for him, as well as the taxi he will need to take. He had to use his thought-stopping method because his fears have taken such a hold on him. While trying to combine his own awareness with the panoramic vista, he turns a 360-degree circle. In any event, Claude believes he'll fail. He frets about getting a taxi and the apartment the systems have selected for him while he waits to depart the ship. He had to use his thought-stopping method because his fears have taken such a hold on him. While trying to combine his own awareness with the panoramic picture, he does a 360-degree turn. Claude, on the other hand, is certain that he will fail. On a road trip, two men talk about masturbation in Section 3. Section 4 is an excerpt from a Peoria newspaper obituary. On Saturday, an IRS examiner died of a heart attack while working at his desk. For the past 4 days, he had been dead. He was, ironically, looking into the taxation of some local medical practices. A youngster by the name of Leonard Stechik is the subject of subsection 5. He's a flawless kid, which makes him incredibly irksome. One of his teachers ends up in a mental institution following a confrontation with the youngster that involved blunt scissors and the threat to use them on the boy. His mother had an accident while cleaning the oven, leaving her unconscious. His principal has nightmares about killing him. He used to write her 3 times a week, but physicians ordered him to stop because of her mental health. Section 6 begins with 2 teenagers seated at a park picnic table. Her and Lane Dean's decision-making process is complicated. They both have a strong religious faith, yet they also question it. Even though he wants her to abort the pregnancy, she intends to carry it. Determined doesn't want him to feel obligated to be there for the birth. He knows she's telling the truth and wants him to express his feelings for her and their son. Is there anything even Jesus would do that we don't know? On Sylvanshine, subsection 7 has returned. In a bus or van with other government employees, he is traveling. He's having a talk with someone from SID. Meanwhile, he's thinking about the impending examinations, his new assignment, and the people he's sitting next to. Sylvanshine can't stop hearing low-level music. Discovers that they're in an old ice cream truck that was once on the road. Aside from that, he likes to gaze out the window at the surrounding countryside. As part of his job here, Merrill Earle's liaison, he had to cultivate good relations and clear communication lines for Laryl to exploit when he arrived to mediate for him and gather information on as many aspects and issues involved in the examination of returns as possible, since there were some difficult, delicate decisions to make that had an impact far beyond this provincial P. Section 8 focuses on a trailer park that Sylvanshine passes on his motorcycle, as well as the residents who dwell there. All of the residents' stories are bleak, including that of a young child and her mother. The girl cares for her mentally ill mother while continuing her education. She will exact severe retribution on anyone who is harsh or hazardous to her. Mother and daughter are on their way after a government official stops by. They get a lift from a truck driver. Mother and daughter have lunch at a truck stop after he makes a play for the girl. Sections 9, 10, and 11 contain declarations from the author as to whether or not The Pale King is a work of fiction or non-fiction. In addition, he discusses his previous articles and the new IRS. Subsection 12 brings back Stechik, the world's most aggravating young man. When he turned 26, he moved into a new apartment. Consequently, he travels from house to house passing out the U.S. Post Office's 1979 National Zip Code Directory and introducing himself. That person's interests will be piqued by the book's advantages and what it has to offer. It is described in Section 13 that a 17-year-old boy has an extremely high rate of perspiration. He has no idea when it'll happen to him. However, it appears to occur more frequently under high-stress conditions and in large groups. When he has an attack of sweating, he becomes increasingly paranoid. The IRS examiners who are working on a project to humanize the new IRS are discussed in detail in paragraph 14. It's Stechik's job to organize and film a wide variety of subjects and scenarios. It's RFI, or random fact intuition, that's covered in Section 15. A person whose thoughts wander off into unrelated facts as a result of chance encounters. This is something that Claude Sylvanshine possesses. He'll be able to pick up on and odd information about a stranger he sees on the street or a piece of trivia that no one else knows. Lane Dean Jr. is the subject of subsection 16. He's just arrived at the office and is looking for a place to relax. He tries to make friends with 2 other males who emerge from the shadows. An IRS agent is compared to a police officer or firefighter in Section 17. Because no one praised or even thought about them, they seemed much more heroic. Subsection 18 focuses on the Pale King's use of desk nameplates. Instead of using the names of individual agents, the desks are given unique names. In Section 19, three men discuss the average American's connection with the government and how education has affected that relationship. Democracy and the American experiment are also discussed, as well as the authority of the government and why many don't want to pay their fair share in taxes. In addition, movies and not voting demoralize folks by removing their sense of responsibility. After then, the discussion shifts to politics and who should be elected as the next president. A woman has relocated to the suburbs in Section 20. She is the owner of two dogs who are notorious barkers. A man tries to evade the IRS by filing fraudulent tax returns in Section 21. In the event that he is apprehended, he will be required to pay back taxes. Interview with an IRS agent and his motivations for becoming an agent can be found in Section 22. Everything he did seemed pointless. In Part 23, we meet a man who is both dreaming and bored. His childhood and the feeling of not belonging recur in his dreams from time to time. Section 24 is another snippet from the author. His time working with the IRS in Peoria, Illinois, is recounted in detail. This part deals with the duration of his journey. An alphabetical list of people doing quiet office labor, such as turning pages, appears in subsection 25. Sec. 25.6 is devoted to the test phantoms. When the examiner is bored, these kinds of hallucinations pop up. The phantoms are different depending on the personality type of the examiner. As for Garrity and Bloomquist, they visit Silvershine occasionally. Section 27 discusses how the new office's new hires will be orientated. They will receive their new credentials and papers for their new roles during this time. They include David Cusk and David Wallace, the author. The 10 laws of IRS personnel are discussed in detail at paragraph 28. Anyone who isn't satisfied with their current position is looking for a new one. 29 deals with a SID-monitored group of men and women. Among the topics they discuss are excrement and their childhoods, which included a few bullies. 31 is all about Glendenning and how many friends he has in this section, as discussed by Reynolds and Silvershine. They gossip about a lot of people. Before Merrill Lairll arrives, they're getting a sense of the vibe from the folks around them. Reynolds relays the data collected by Silvershine. Shin's first day at the post is depicted in the 31st paragraph. Auditors are included in Section 32 of this document. Everyone in the vicinity of Nugent's cubicles can hear his sister Julie impersonating the demon voice from The Exorcist while she talks on the phone with him. A tax return audited by Lane Dean Jr. is the subject of paragraph 33. His workdays are long and exhausting, and he knows it. A never-ending list of things to complete. An alphabetical listing of tax forms can be found in Section 34%. The author's perspective can be found in paragraph 35. To describe his audit group manager's child, he begins by mentioning that he would occasionally bring it into the office. He dislikes it and feels it's too aggressive for his taste. Subsection 36 tells the story of a little child who aspires to kiss every area of his body. His back was injured at the age of 6 when he began. He had to go to a chiropractor. She offers him a list of exercises and tells him to do them every day. He realizes that if he wants to succeed, he has to put in the time and effort. The majority of his contortion is stretching by the age of 11. An unnamed man and lady meet for the first time in the 37th paragraph of this section. The author of this part is subsection 31.8, which discusses issues with IRS forms. David Wallace's file has been muddled with that of another David Wallace. Impersonation was alleged against the author. Attempting to work for the IRS becomes a major headache for both guys after the mix-up. Claude Silvershine collected information on DeWitt Glendenning, but he didn't realize that Stechik does the most of Glendenning's job, therefore some of the data in this section pertains to Stechik. A psychiatric appointment is the focus of Cusk's story in Section 40. He shares with her all of his anxieties. The car sent to retrieve Lairll's assistant is subsection 41. The driver preaches like a preacher. Section 42 contains references to pop culture from the 80s and 90s that are lost on the younger generation. On his first day at work, the author, in the story told in paragraph 43, tries to catch up with some of the talk that is already going on around. Agents were engaged in a crash in Michigan. Everyone, save the author, seems to be talking about it. A terrorist attack is being considered. However, the author takes this time to reaffirm that Glendenning is an excellent leader and a wonderful person. Section 44 is all about the lessons you learn while working for the IRS. In today's world, you can't live without it. There is nothing you can accomplish if you don't get bored. Tony and her mother had stolen a truck once again in subsection 45. The man finally comes up to them and yells at them. Crashing the truck, her mother is injured in the accident. Upon seeing the mother's injuries, the man rushes to see Kate. He then murders her. Despite this, Tony pretends to be dead and he walks away. Tony is giving the author her story years after the accident. Section 46 discusses May Bears, an after-work bar frequented by IRS employees. Examiner Meredith Rand is stunning. Men are afraid of her. In the presence of the other ladies, the males are oblivious. Many of the other attendees are profiled in this section. Tony Ware is the subject of paragraph 47. She is working for the Internal Revenue Service on a case involving a convenience store. When conducting an investigation, Tony can adopt a variety of personalities and voices. It gives her the ability to go unnoticed. Section 48 discusses a company outing. The tea is laced with narcotics, and everyone is in a stupor. The insects seem to be the only thing on the mind of the man being interviewed. The new director is Section 49. Mr. Glendenning's office has been taken over by Merrill Errol. Before they enter to see him, the agents discover Reynolds and Silvenshine pre-briefing them. Over the agent's head, they communicate with each other by placing themselves on either side of him and leaning over him. Occasionally, when they addressed Chris Fogel directly, they became a little didactic, but it wasn't completely boring. Reynolds and Silvenshine were well versed in the professional histories and resume of numerous high-ranking government officials. Each exchange between Reynolds and Silvenshine has a distinct cadence. There was no time to waste. Section 50 describes a man working with a qualified facilitator to learn relaxation techniques. Characters. Claude Silvenshine. Silvenshine is a word that is an optical phenomenon. Tree and shrub leaves with dew on them reflect sunlight. To make lenses, droplets of water must first be deposited on the leaves by the wax. Light rays are deflected in the opposite direction by the lenses. The character does this. He doesn't bother anyone. His boss, who will be taking over the Peoria branch, has ordered him there to scout the agents and report back. Because of Silvenshine's attention to detail, Merrill Errol entrusted him to him. He is able to get into the gang without being perceived as a spy since he is able to get along with everyone. His roommate Reynolds, who also works for Errol, receives all the information he collects and sends it to him. Because he reflects the speaker's light back at him, he is an effective listener. L. Dean Jr. Lane Dean Jr. is a typical desk drone employee. Because he's a devout Christian, he gets married to his college sweetheart as soon as she gets pregnant. Throughout the remainder of it, his life is a living hell. He's not happy at home. His wife and child do not want anything to do with him. As a result, time flies by in a matter of minutes, hours, days, and even years. He's progressively losing his mind. Leonard Stechik. Leonard was a model child in every respect. He was too perfect for me. After just a few minutes with him, everyone wanted to kill him or themselves. In addition to his mother, who attempted suicide and ended up in a coma, his father also developed a tic, and both his teachers and the school's principal need psychiatric treatment after dealing with him. Since he's an adult, Leonard's job is to do everything for his employer. His boss gets promoted constantly, but Leonard isn't envious of him. Forgiving the boys who tormented him as a child, he wrote them letters. He gave away the cake and ice cream from his 11th birthday party to the homeless before the guests had a chance to eat it. He went above and beyond to make himself appear kind and helpful. Tony Ware. Tony was raised in an abusive home. Her mother was a mess, both on the inside and out. She learned to take care of her mother and herself at a young age because she was raised in poverty. Her retaliation was immediate and comprehensive for the wrongs she had suffered. She killed those who were nasty to her as a child. Tony was 13 when a man made advances toward her, and Tony's mother seized his truck. In the midst of the chase, she stole his truck when he was fast sleeping from Tony's mother. Tony's mother was slain by the assailant, who assumed Tony had died. The bulk of her work as an agent is in the field. Tax fraud and its perpetrators are her specialty. She has the ability to adopt the personas and voices of a number of women. David Wallace, a fictitious character created as an alter ego of the author who is a typical office drone but is exceptionally perceptive about the people around him. Having him as a character adds to the story's momentum and realism. On February 21, 1962, David Foster Wallace was born in Ithaca, New York. As the son of two academics, he was frequently uprooted from his childhood home. During his time at Amherst College, Wallace competed in junior tennis at the regional level and double majored in English and philosophy. His college honors thesis, The Broom of the System, later provided the basis for his first novel, 1987. By the time he earned his summa cum laude degree in 1985, Wallace had already made the decision to pursue writing as a profession. After his debut novel was published in 1987, he earned a Master of Fine Arts and a degree in creative writing. Wallace's career as a satirist and postmodernist was begun with the success of Broom. Wallace began graduate school at Harvard University in Boston, Massachusetts, after completing his undergraduate studies. He began writing Infinite Jest, his best-known and most well-received work, while he was employed there. He taught at Pomona College in Claremont, California, and continued writing while doing so. One of the stories in Wallace's short story collection Brief Interviews was awarded the MacArthur Fellowship and the Aga Khan Prize for Fiction in 1997. A purportedly fun thing I'll never do again and Everything and More are two examples of Wallace's non-fiction writings that were published in 1997 and 2002, respectively. For Rolling Stone, Wallace covered the events of September 11, 2001, and John McCain's presidential campaign in 2000. Wallace was married to painter Karen L. Green in 2004 and the couple has been together since. Wallace had a long history of drug and alcohol abuse, despair, and outbreaks of inappropriate sexual behavior. He was institutionalized several times over his life. Wallace turned to antidepressant medicine to help him deal with his problems, but the prescription had disastrous side effects. A variety of therapies, including electroconvulsive therapy, were tried on Wallace as well. Wallace committed suicide on September 12, 2008, after a relapse of his depression that his medication failed to alleviate. The Pale King, his unfinished novel and notes from his computer, were published posthumously by his widow following his death. The University of Texas in Austin acquired Wallace's papers and archives in March 2010 and they are now housed at the university's Harry Ransom Center. Thank you for listening in Audiobook Academy. Don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button for more content like this. See you in next video.